Do you have a favorite Cardinals Red Sox history moment? Because your knowledge of the Red Sox and baseball, it isn't just limited to these modern times. When you've been on this show, I've heard you talk about the '46 World Series and stuff. But what do you make of this rivalry between? And I think it is a bit of a rivalry
Yeah,
between
well,
these two great baseball towns.
I can give you two. Number one is I was there in '04 at the old stadium when they beat the Cardinals in the World Series, and they brought Johnny Pesky on the trip, and he passed away a few years back, actually back in 2012. And Johnny was a dear friend of mine. He lived up in Swampscott, not far from me, and I used to go up to his house. For those of your listeners who he was the guy who quote unquote held the ball in '46 when Slaughter made the mad dash and scored the deciding run in Game 7 of the World Series. And he didn't really hold the ball. It was a question of not getting a signal from Leon Culbertson in center field. But I don't want to get into that. The fact is that Pesky took a lot of grief about that for years. And in the clubhouse afterwards, they had him in the clubhouse and they gave him the World Series trophy. And, he cried real tears. And that was a big moment for Johnny because, different era, different team, obviously. But I think to him, it was sort of a cleansing ritual. And he took that to his grave. And that was kind of a cool thing.
That's awesome. I love that story. Thanks for sharing it.
And I will give you one more is that when they beat the when the Red Sox beat the Cardinals in 13, no, in '04, it was the same thing. I'm sorry. It was the same World Series. I did a story for The Athletic last year revisiting that World Series, but I told it through the lens of the Cardinals. So
I remember that. I remember that. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all the only people I talked to were Cardinals people, and I talked to Tony, and I asked him if he had a specific memory about that, and it was that he remembers going on the top step of the dugout when the final out was made and tipping his cap across the field to Terry Francona, and of course Francona didn't see it, but Tony wanted Francona to know that he was acknowledging congratulations across the field, and Tony told me a great story about that.
One lasting memory I have from that 2004 World Series, and this is a little self-serving in the way that, I'm going to do the whole, aren't St. Louis fans great thing, which again, they are, but I mean, I know it annoys people on the outside, not you, because you get it. But I was really proud of the city and proud of the fans here when, the Red Sox won Game 4, and Cardinals fans genuinely were happy for them. First of all, the Cardinals opened the gates to let Red Sox fans in late so they could see the moment. And then Cardinals fans were welcoming Red Sox fans with open arms and almost like kind of sharing in with it, because St. Louis totally understood the whole 1918 thing and all the misery and all the heartbreak. And I remember looking around and just seeing Cardinals fans like standing up and clapping, and they were smiling. And I mean, in the world we live in now, where everyone's at war with each other, man, that almost seems like, happy days are here again. I mean, that was just a great scene, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a thing in modern day sports, particularly in baseball, where when I was a kid, if you went to a Red Sox game at Fenway, and if you happened to leave the game in the fifth and sixth inning and exited the ballpark, there was nobody there because everyone was either at home or at the ballpark. And there's this thing now, you go to all these ballparks, hundreds, because there's bars and taverns and whatnot. So there's a huge crowd around the ballpark. And I didn't see it because I was inside, but back in '04 in Game 4, there were hundreds of Red Sox fans who either lived in the area, they were Subway alums, or they flew down to St. Louis to get tickets and couldn't get in and just hung around outside. But from what I'm told, and again, it's all anecdotal because I was in the ballpark, but that there were lots and lots of Red Sox fans, and it didn't go unnoticed. A lot of people wrote it that the Cardinals just said, "Hey, come on in and find a place to stand." And they, because of that act of sportsmanship, these hundreds of Red Sox fans got to see with their own eyes something that their great-grandfathers had only seen, which is the Red Sox winning the World Series.
Yeah, it was something else. Believe me, on a visceral level, I really appreciated it because I do truly believe these are the two best baseball cities in America, and I think that in a weird, I know Red Sox fans have always respected Cardinals fans. That's been expressed many times to me, and it's vice versa. So I kind of like that, and maybe they'll meet in the World Series again. And as we talked about, our gift to you will be on the floor tonight, Jason Tatum. Actually, Danny Ainge got that gift by making that trade on draft day. I feel bad for Tatum, and I want to ask you this. And I don't know how much you listen to sports talk radio for your own sanity. I hope it's not too much. But even though I do it for a living, has Tatum been getting worked over on the talk shows?
Yes. That's the short answer. Yes, I mean it's the old thing that it's the other team never wins. It's our team lost, and if you look at it through that lens, if you don't see it as a Warriors victory but instead a Celtics loss, there must be a blame assessment, and a lot of the assessments being directed at Tatum, who hasn't played well. I mean, there have been unforced turnovers and complains too much at the officials and so forth, and it's not a good look for a very, very good basketball player. And we've seen him do superstar things, shall we say, throughout this postseason, and we've seen him do things that, and I'll choose my words carefully, that would suggest that he's not ready for the big stage. So in that spirit, with so much going on tonight, I'm expecting a big game for him because he talks endlessly about the banners, about the retired uniform numbers, about the history. He's, the fact that he adores Kobe. I mean, he obviously has an attachment to the history of the game as opposed merely to the sport. That the game of basketball, the sport of basketball, history of basketball means a lot to him. And I happen to know that the retired numbers that are at the rafters of the Garden, the only one that's retired that belongs to a player who didn't win a championship was Reggie Lewis, who died very young back in 1993, and so his retired uniform number was directed more at what might have been as opposed to what he did do. So, long story short, if Tatum ever hopes to get his number up there, it's not just putting up great numbers. He must do great things in the postseason, and I think he's aware of that.
And I think that's fair. It's tough, but it's fair. And I think that this was a big year for a big season for Tatum, and then as a first-team All-Star, he got nationally he was kind of raised up as like one of the emerging big stars of the game and the next great player or whatever you want to call it. And with that also comes a responsibility, even if you didn't exactly sign up for it, but people want to see the championship rings. They just do, and you have to be at your best. It's expected if you're going to be put in that category, it is expected that you're going to play your best ball when it matters the most. And again, tough but fair. That's just what sports are. I don't think anybody. You don't get into this thing if you're going to be overly sensitive or you're going to feel sorry for yourself. And I think Tatum's got great character. So I'm with you, man. I just hope it, and I expect he'll play great tonight.
Yeah, and the thing is, yes, the Celtics have won 17 NBA championships, but they haven't won one since '08. And, they had that retooled second big three, Ray Allen, Garnett, and Pierce. They might have won another one in 2010, but Kendrick Perkins got hurt. He couldn't play in Game 7. They had like a 9-point lead late in the second half, squandered it, lost to the Lakers. They lost to Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals, and a few years after that. So that big three won one championship. They could have won more. They haven't won one since. And this has been a century where championships is a big deal. 6 by the Patriots, 4 by the Red Sox, 1 each by the Bruins and Celtics. And I'm sure the Celtics would like to add some hardware to that trophy case. That's a big thing in 21st century Boston.
Steve Buckley, you've been very kind to join us 3 times now in a relatively short time frame, so we appreciate it very much. People should follow you on Twitter at Buck in Boston. And I urge everyone to subscribe to The Athletic. I have, even when I was writing for The Athletic, I paid for it. By the way, Katie Woo's got a great piece on Jack Flaherty today that you should read about everything he went through when he was injured and feeling, hopeless and helpless, and he was angry. Really great insight there. So that's another piece that you should read. But subscribe to The Athletic. It's cheap, and the content is unbelievable. So, Steve Buckley, thank you again, sir.
It's a pleasure. Take care.
All right. That's our friend in Boston, Steve Buckley. And Jim, he's just got a common sense type of insight. That's what I like about him. When I read his stuff, it's always entertaining. It's always good. But, he doesn't get histrionic or crazy. And, but he also puts it out there. Like, for example, when they lost the other night in Golden State, Buck wrote a tough but fair column, and he was just saying, like, look, we don't want to hear it that there's fatigue. We don't want to hear it that it's the officiating. That nobody's concerned. Nobody's concerned about your troubles. It's sports. This is a championship final. This is when you have to be at your best. Nobody wants to hear about your problems. And he just basically said, look, just. You don't like all this stuff. You don't like the officiating. You don't like this. You don't like that. You feel a little tired. Hey, suck it up. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, and this is the only way you're ever going to gain. You're going to be seen in a positive light. You can't just. It seemed. He was saying it seems like it's a team that's almost resigned to the fact that they're not going to win this. And he in a very classy way. Not a shrill way, he basically challenged him and put it on him, really. And he was right. And I think Tatum, Sean Powell, our guest from NBA.com, said it yesterday, and he said it best, and it's 100% true, which is, Jason Tatum was exalted in the NBA. He took a big step up in terms of the categories, one of the truly elite players in the league, and everyone's mentioning him with other great players in the league, and not mentioning to some of the players of the past, not that. But then comes the next test. Okay, you're an all-star. You've got all these 40-point games. This is the first time you were first team All-NBA. You're only 24. You're probably the best young player the Celtics have had since, I don't know, it goes back a long way. So now it's time to win a ring, and it's like, and if you can't perform at your best in the biggest spots, people are going to be hard on you. That's just the way it is. And I hope he doesn't continue to turn the ball over. I was reading some pieces today, including one at The Athletic about Jason Tatum and the fact how the Golden State Warriors have shut him down, and they have. They've done a great job of blocking him and keeping him on these drives, uncontested drives. Everywhere he turns, there's an extra defender. They're doing it in a way that's not exactly standard. It's very confusing. They think they have an opening. He thinks he has an opening. He thinks that, okay, we've done this before. This always works. Look at this. There's a space there. We're going to go. We're going to throw the ball there, and it's going to come back, and then I'm going to be able to drive the. But they don't allow it. It's like they have they put up a gate wherever he turns. They're just a great defensive team. I mean, a great defensive team, and they're also the Golden State Warriors have that championship caliber. I mean, you're talking about Klay Thompson. You're talking about Curry, Thompson, Green, Agawa. You're talking about 3 big time players and a 4th really good player. And they know they kind of know how to find a solution to everything, and they also know how to get under the opponent's skin and to frustrate them, and knowing that we won't be the frustrated team, they will. That we're gonna actually get to the point where they're gonna crack under pressure, and that's basically what's been happening. But their defense on Tatum, which was their number 1 priority, their number 2 priority, probably their number 3 priority. It's really taken a toll on him. And even though the last game, he scored well, he rebounded well, he had assists, disappeared in the fourth quarter, and he also had too many turnovers. And that's life. You're on the big stage. This is your platform to an even higher level of stardom. And you either get it done or you don't. It's as simple as that.
It is put up or shut up time tonight. I get some of the frustration because I'll watch the game and I'm doing the same thing everybody else is. Why are we turning the ball over here? Why are you going here? Why are you going there? I'll throw out something here though, and I'm not trying to be a homer for Jason Tatum, and you kind of alluded to it. It's not a complete embarrassment to be losing to the Golden State Warriors, right?
No, it's not.
It's not like they were losing to, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a random team like when one of the Nets teams got real hot with, that was a Jason Kidd, and they went to the final. Well, they were a one-year wonder. This is a dynasty-type team they're playing tonight.
No doubt. They're going for their fourth championship in 8 years. And the only reason they didn't go for more is because Klay Thompson missed 2 years, and he, with two different devastating injuries. And he's a very, very, very important player in all this. In fact, his contributions in this series and his defensive work, Klay Thompson has been huge in this series as it's gone along. So, this is their sixth time, this nucleus. Sixth time in an NBA Finals. They're going for a fourth championship in 8 years. And they are a dynasty, and they are one of the all-time great teams in NBA history. So you're right about that.
That's why when I go, well, you may not get it done this year, but the kid's only in his fifth year. I think you would hope they'll be back here or there as long as they surround him with good talent. But it's his first chance, and by golly, he hasn't been good enough, and I get that. But I'm not overly embarrassed if they do lose tonight for that reason, because then it'll be like, well, you know what? That Golden State group, they're legit one of the all-time great teams. They may be a top 10 team in the history of the league when you go back and you go, well, there's those Lakers and those Celtics, Bill Russell's teams, the Pistons teams. Oh, yeah, you know what? That the San Antonio group, and, we'll count the Golden State Warriors in there as well when you go all-time top 10s. And those are some great teams. However, if he finds a way to win tonight, you get to Game 7, oh, my goodness, Bernie, we're going to be set for a fun Sunday night if we can get to a Game 7 with an NBA Finals, the championship on the line. Because if they do win tonight, I think obviously Tatum will have to play a big factor in that. And I also think the guys around him, Bernie, that haven't been great will be much better tonight. And I think Jaylen Brown's got to be a factor tonight. If he is, they got a shot at winning this thing.
And they're gonna have to keep their composure. They got to quit hollering at refs. They got to quit turning the ball over. When they have a transition opportunity, they got to take it instead of slowing the ball down, just going to this stupid thing, running the shot clock down for what reason I don't know. That's never been them. It's just strange. They get bad shots. Marcus Smart's got to play a great game. Draymond Green has talked about him. Draymond Green said some things yesterday, and I know we have some stuff, and I'll look later in the show. We'll see if we can find this one. I don't think we have that, and that's okay. But Draymond Green was asked a question: what's this challenge been like, say, compared to when you guys had to take on LeBron James all those times in the finals? And he almost just laughed at the question, and. He was talking about, and he was trying not to rip the Celtics, but he basically ripped the Celtics without doing it directly. But he went out of his way to just say how much he respected Marcus Smart because he's a great competitor, and he's tangled with him on the court, but he just says, I respect the hell out of that guy. So he was sort of putting him in that class of players who are, the toughest competitors they've faced, and maybe the most kind of pain in the butt competitors they've faced during these postseason runs historically. Draymond Green believes Marcus Smart has that. He didn't mention Tatum. He didn't mention any of the other players. So the inference is, he thinks these other guys are coming up soft. And I think a lot of neutral fans would look at that and say, I think he's right. So there's a lot of pressure on these guys. And by the way, Marcus Smart is tough as heck. He's a great competitor. He is, pardon the phrase, a warrior. But he's also been kind of in and out in this series in terms of smart play. I mean, he's been forcing stuff. He's made a lot. He has not directed traffic very well, And he's got – I think actually Marcus Smart might be the most important piece in this game tonight that is not an obvious piece. Because, everyone's going to be looking on Tatum. That's what's happened in the NBA culture. It's all about one guy. Everybody shorthands it to one guy,
Yeah.
It's Bird versus Magic.
Yes.
It's LeBron versus Curry. It's always like that. So the shorthand, the billboarding, it's Tatum versus Curry, But if Marcus Smart, I've watched all their games this postseason. When Marcus Smart is really, really sharp and making great decisions, they're very tough to beat. I mean, really tough to beat. But he's been a little flaky. And I hope that's not one of those nights tonight.
He's got to be strong. It's such a good point. It's not always just Tatum. He's got to get the contributions from everyone around him. They got to be smarter. And that the officiating, let's not talk about it. If I'm in that locker room, don't worry about it. Just go take care of your own business. Don't worry about it. There's calls on both sides most nights where you're going, what are they doing? What do they call that for? Why didn't they call this? Let that alone, because that's how you get beat. You start worrying about something else. Worry about what you have to do right in front of you. And I think, look, I have confidence that the Celtics are going to pull this out tonight, because I really believe each game is taking on a completely different vibe. Even though the Warriors have won a couple in a row, most of these games, Bernie, they're turning in the third and somewhere between the third and middle of the fourth quarter. It's like, we talked about the last game where you're like, well,
fourth quarter really
has
been the cauldron.
And so let's see what happens tonight. I think it'd be a good night for the Celtics at the Garden. I'm hoping for it.
They just got to play. They got to play a total game. They've been falling apart in the fourth quarter of the last two, and that's why they went from 2-1 up to 3-2 down, because they faded terribly in the fourth quarter. And the other night was really bad because they battled back to take a lead.
Yeah,
after
that's
being
right.
Done. So they got to shoot in the fourth quarter, quit turning the ball over. Udoka, the coach, has got to make I think he's going to make some changes with his substitutions tonight. I think he's going to bring some other guys off the bench, because their bench, which was a strength up until this series, is getting absolutely nothing done. And it's one of the reasons why the fourth quarter has been so wearing on some of their principal players. I mean, they just don't get any help from the bench. And so I think the coach is going to shake it up a little bit tonight. One of the things he's going to have to decide is whether they go with both big men on the floor at the same time, Horford and Williams, whether they go small. I mean, he's got some decisions to make, because, look, I think this guy's a hell of a coach, and he's a great first-year coach. And he learned from the right people. I'm talking about Udoka. But in this series, it's not just Steve Kerr, but it's Mike Brown, and it's all these other assistants who are so good. They've taken the Celtics coaches to school. I mean, they've just absolutely, embarrassed them at times. So, and that's part of what you mentioned a few minutes ago. We're talking about a coach who's won 3 championships and is going for a 4th, and a coach who won championships with the Chicago Bulls, may have been on one of those San Antonio Spurs team. I'm talking about Steve Kerr.
So, yeah.
This guy's a champion. I mean, they know what you have to do to get through 4 rounds and get that Lawrence O'Brien trophy. I mean, they've done it so many times collectively, and that's one thing. This coach on the Boston side and his staff and the players, they just they haven't done it. And this experience does matter. Championship experience this time of year. Mm-hmm. So anyway,